America will do what is necessary to ensure our nation's security.
Those are individuals. Those are people's sons, people's daughters, people's mothers, people's fathers, cousins. These are our brothers and sisters.
And it's desperately needed that people get out and say no, no to war.
And this is a place where movements are born. And we today are building a world peace movement.
HUFUD, meaning Humanity United for Universal Demilitarization, is something that I started 3 years ago after many years of cooperating with many peace and human rights organizations. No matter how big the efforts made by all those organizations, peace was never near us. On the contrary, we had an increase in violence, not only between countries, but increase in violence in society. Having weapons around us can create nothing but violence. This is what they are made for. My aim is really to demilitarize the world. We are in the 21st century and we call ourselves civilized. So we have to show that we are civilized. We know that children, when they have a disagreement, they fight. Politicians who run our countries, they are not children, so we should not allow them to dispose of people's life the way they do. Sending soldiers to another country to kill people is totally unacceptable in our modern age, and especially leads to so much suffering, because of course the dead do not suffer, but the millions and millions of bereaved relatives and friends who lose their loved ones. And then there is, of course, the other element, which is the economy. There are countries where people die because they have no food, because they have no medicines, no medical care, and yet those countries spend millions in military wear and in paying armies to go and fight and kill.
So my name is Sarah and I work for Peace Jam UK. We are part of a global peace program that uses the inspirational experiences of 14 Nobel Peace Prize winners to inspire and empower young people to make change in themselves, their communities and in the world.
My name is Cecilia Andre. I'm a volunteer with Peace Jam, but I'm also a volunteer with the International Peace Bureau with the Youth Network. I felt like I needed to do something myself to be on the ground, be one of the people that makes things happen instead of just sitting behind the desk and just doing my own academic research.
Peace Jam made a documentary about the former president of Costa Rica, Oscar Arias, and it follows his journey from a young boy growing up in Costa Rica, which was one of the first countries to abolish a standing army, and how this impacted him and his legacy as president. And when Central America had conflict, it was Oscar Arias and the Arias deal that brought peace to the region. And he did this by sitting the presidents down, and he wouldn't let people leave the negotiating table until they agreed to stop the fighting and create peace.
My name is Angelo Cardona. I'm a peace activist following the example of the non-militarized country Costa Rica. We believe that in order to achieve peace, it is imperative to get a non-militarized world. It is imperative to have governments reallocating the military budgets and the military spendings and start to invest in education, start finding the solution to health problems instead of investing on war.
You know, at the beginning you don't really know, does anyone else think what I think? Does anyone else believe that peace is possible? Is it just me? Do I just have these like crazy ideas? But then when you go to these events, you realize that there are so many people, but they might feel a bit isolated. They need a platform to actually express themselves and come forward and say, I want to make peace happen. I think this is possible and we need to work together.
Back in 2006, Peace Jam launched a global campaign called the 1 Billion Acts of Peace campaign. And the Nobel Peace Prize winners, this was their global call to action, not just to young people, but to everyone all over the world, non-profits, businesses, community organizations, universities, everyone, to take action. And they identified 10 issue areas that if we all worked on these, then we could help create world peace. And one of these issues is non-proliferation and disarmament.
The massive killings is a result of a political and economic interest of some political parties in my country that are just willing to keep the business of war. They want to stop the implementation of the peace accord, as this means ending one of the largest business in Colombia, which is the arms trade and narco traffic. As you know, Colombia is a very well-known country due to the narco traffic. So I'm pretty sure that some politicians are just interested in keeping that business. Therefore, if there are social leaders working towards implementation of the peace accord, that's not a good business. Peace is not a good business, actually. Peace doesn't make money.
When different organizations go to a country and they have different missions, they look after different aspects of building a state or building peace. Sometimes they don't communicate, or sometimes there is fragmentation within the main objective. And because there is no communication, the objective is not really achieved.
I have spoken to many people. I was giving a concert, and the piano teacher was married to a man who worked in a bomb company, in a manufacturing bombs. And he said to me how much he agreed with me about the horrors of war and how unnecessary they are. Suddenly, it was when the Kosovo war started, and this man was celebrating. And I said, but you told me you are so much against wars. And he said, yes, but those airplanes from the United States Air Force are using our bombs. So that means that we have our future guaranteed. And the best advert we have is the destruction they produce. Then other countries see how effective our bombs are, and they order more. So for us, this is a very good publicity. And this, of course, happens to all weapon manufacturers.
As I have been working for peace in many different countries and regions of the world, I always have asked myself, why is it that if we have many people working for peace in different countries, why still we have wars? There are thousands of organizations. I know many organizations here in the UK, in Europe, Africa, Asia, in all continents, and still we have wars. So this is a question I always have had in my mind, and I was wondering if what I was doing or the projects I was leading for peace building actually were doing an impact in society. So that brought me to the question, maybe there might be something behind the war that we are not seeing. Finally, after so many years of working for peace and attending conferences in different regions of the world, I got an answer. I think the business of war is the hidden shadow of war. The business of war is what moves people, is what moves politicians. I think we have to uncover the business of war and start to fight against it.
Two politicians who don't agree decide to go to war. That is a childish attitude. I have been looking at the situation from every perspective. To make and sell weapons and train people to use them is totally illogical. Why don't we give a weapon to every child at school to guarantee peace in the classroom? No, because if we give them, of course they will use them.
I think there is indoctrination going on because you expect war, conflict, everything to be around you all the time for the rest of your life. And this is what you're being told from the beginning, from birth, at least my generation, I would say. And you get to a point where you think, yeah, but I live in this mindset. Like, how do I get rid of this? And I think, in a way, we need to demilitarize ourselves.
Non-proliferation and disarmament can be done. It seems impossible, but this is a goal that we can all work towards.
¿Cuál sería, digamos, un camino de pronto para Colombia? Una nación pues, que sabemos que cuenta con ejército oficial, con paramilitarismo, con bandas criminales, con guerrilla.
Es un problema difícil y va a ser laborioso resolverlo y hay que ir por etapas. Yo creo que la pacificación es lo inmediato, que con los acuerdos de paz ya tiene un marco legal. En el futuro habrá que concentrarse en eliminar los grupos paramilitares y otros actores que perturban el proceso. Habrá que repensar la existencia del ejército y las funciones o los objetivos del ejército. Ya podría entonces pensarse en un marco legal y un papel del ejército, porque en ese caso ya el ejército no sería necesario para la defensa y juntos más bien empezar a construir caminos de paz y de progreso.
70 años atrás había ejército. ¿Y cómo fue que de repente no hubo? Tuvo que haber alguien que decidió, porque no es que hicieron elecciones, vamos a tener ejército, no, alguien decidió que no va a haber ejército.
Bueno, hubo un proceso que nadie decidió, que se fue dando de hecho, y es que Costa Rica simplemente empezó a restar importancia al ejército porque desde mucho tiempo atrás se dio cuenta que no lo necesitaba, y entonces el ejército fue desgastándose, empequeñeciendo, y hasta el momento en que en 1948 don José Figueres, presidente de facto en ese momento, se dio cuenta de que era el momento oportuno para eliminar esa amenaza interna que era el ejército. Desgraciadamente el mundo está en manos del gran consorcio militar, que es el que promueve las guerras para poder vender sus armas. Esa es la pura verdad, la simple verdad, y eso es lo que está llevando al mundo a un desastre, porque va ligado con la contaminación, con la explotación de las poblaciones, con la diferencia entre países, la diferencia económica entre países, esto tiende a continuar la dominación económica de un pequeño grupo sobre el resto del mundo, y ese es el enemigo, el consorcio militar internacional.
President Eisenhower warned in 1961, and I'm sure that you're all familiar with this, the development of a military-industrial complex. A network of arms manufacturers, politicians and the military with a vested interest in war and an undue influence, a very real influence on government policy. So just as arms production should have been winding down, the British and United States governments helped it to expand by privatising nationalised sections of the industry, by outsourcing military services to open up business opportunities in the logistics of war. And arms fairs were set up in the late 1990s to provide international venues for this newly globalised industry. The world's largest arms fair, it's called the Defence Security Equipment International, or the DSEI. This takes place every 2 years in London. And then there are similar fairs in Paris and Abu Dhabi. The film showed the Abu Dhabi fair. And other cities, and more are being set up. There's going to be an arms fair in Sydney. There's going to be an arms fair in Japan in the next couple of years.
My name is Paul Holden. I currently work as the Director of Investigations at Corruption Watch UK. I'm also the author of Indefensible, The 7 Myths That Sustain the Global Arms Trade, and I was also the lead researcher on Shadow World the book and also Shadow World the documentary. I've been working on global arms trade issues for about the last 10 years, and my interest was really sparked by this incredibly corrupt deal that took place in 1999 in South Africa, where I'm originally from. In 1999, the South African government bought a whole range of incredibly expensive and sophisticated military equipment, largely from English and French and German suppliers, equipment that South Africa didn't need at the time. We now know that the cost of the deal is probably around about 70 billion rand, which is equal to about $7 billion. My colleague Andrew was a member of parliament at the time, and he tried to investigate that deal, and as a result of which his political career was effectively ended and he was forced out of parliament. The experience of South Africa was not unique. Andrew received so much information from so many people around the world. We realized that there was no possible way that this couldn't be documented. So Andrew decided to write The Shadow World. It's been published into multiple different languages and also been turned into this documentary. Most of the documentary focuses on the disease of militarism, the disease of permanent war, and the world has witnessed devastating conflict that has brought no more peace and security to the world, that has undermined governments throughout the Middle East and elsewhere, and has fanned the spread of refugees and migrants into Europe, that has created the perfect conditions for fascism to rise again. And so much of that is driven by this false narrative around what security is and how you achieve security, what terrorism is, how you deal with terrorism. And at the heart of that is the global arms trade, which has a major impact in shaping the content and the nature of the discourse around security and peace, that pushes for military solutions to non-military problems, and that's all done in order to maximize the revenues of enormous multinational arms companies that have no real interest in the well-being of humanity, but only in the perpetuation of conflict and war.
We will always have violence in society because people sometimes lose their temper and attack each other. But this is why we have the police, this is why we have lawyers and judges, courts, and why we have prisons. Because when someone attacks someone else, he is a criminal. But if you are wearing a soldier's uniform and you kill on behalf of your country, you can kill 1,000 people, and the more you kill, the more chances you have of becoming a hero. This is totally absurd in the 21st century, and it cannot be accepted by humanity. Parents have to tell governments, we don't make children and bring them up and give them 20 years of love and an education and everything, for you to take them away from us and send them to kill. And why should you use our children for them to kill, and sometimes deliver them back to us in a coffin. Humanity has to say enough is enough.